Welcome into another episode of the Father, Son, and the Holy Buckeye podcast. I'm Sean. With me, as always, is the father himself, Rob Simzak. Dad, we are approaching August at a dangerous rate. How are you feeling as we are starting to put a pin in summer already?
I'm not as thick as the air is here today. The temperatures aren't bad. Back from my morning coffee ride, and basically, I swam over the bridge today and back into Charleston. I didn't bike it. That's how heavy and thick the air is. I think our listeners are going to hear some thunder and lightning in a little bit. But yeah, it's incredibly humid, tropical Philippine type humidity. So other than that, I am good. If it was 95 degrees, I'd probably be laying flat on a board somewhere with ice all over my body, but I'm not doing that.
Good. Well, it sounds like a good day to stay inside and talk some football.
Yeah, baby.
This is the most excited I've been for an episode yet, I think, because we have a jam-packed agenda. We're going to start gearing up for the 2026 season, talking about some of the best quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and defenses in the Big Ten. We're going to weigh in on the SEC versus Big Ten debate after SEC coaches and their commissioners spent pretty much their entire SEC media days talking about how much of a better conference they are than everyone else. But before we get into all that, I understand you wanted to put a bow on last week's topic regarding Michigan's athletic department. So for anyone who may not be aware, since that episode came out, athletic director Ward Manuel has been relieved of his duties. They gave him a $7 million payout, and he'll stay on through the end of the year, but their search for an athletic director is live now. So that's a little update that came out since our last episode, but what did you want to get off your chest?
I don't know. I thought I read the payout was 12 million, but
Jesus, that's even more
I,
egregious.
but I don't know. You're probably right, as you usually are. I, I realized as thinking about this, I wanted the courtroom again, but I already prosecuted our case, and I think we did a more thorough job than any of the broadcast folks, and we beat them all to the punch with our broadcast last week. The only thing I'm going to say, because I'm not going to convince any Michigan fans that you need to drop the Michigan man ethos. You got your national championship. You did it because your coach said find the line and go over it. I'm not going to convince anyone. But the one thing I want to say to conclude the argument is under Ward Manuel, whenever you think of him, his tally, the taxi cab is in front of Ann Arbor and the meter is still running. And right now that meter reads $50+ million. And here's the math: $30 million settlement for the cheating scandal with the NCAA. $30 million, $12 million to Kirkland and or whoever the law firm was out of Chicago. 12 million. Okay, that's 42 million. 12 million because Ward Manuel ran such a clean, audaciously bold Michigan man program that you had to hire an outside law firm because you didn't trust the people in your program to do an investigation. You went outside to spend $12 million. So now that total, 42 million. Now, because Ward's such a great guy, we're going to pay him to go away and buy his silence. And so whether it's 7 million or 12 million, we're at 49 or 54 million dollars. And when I say the meter's still running, you still have a Partridge lawsuit, you still have a Page lawsuit, you still have 250 women that are going to sue the school for the stuff that happened under Matt Weiss. So that meter is going to get closer to 60 probably million dollars here very soon. Might go north of that. And that's for one incompetent athletic director. So that's the final nail in this stupid coffin. And it's a $60 million nail. I rest my case, Sean. I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, I hope it was worth it, Michigan fans, for those championships, because I'm sure that money is going to have to come out of the NIL fund too. And you're right, you touched on it. I wonder how the reason Ward Manuel's buyout is so big is I'm sure it's buying his silence too, because I'm sure there's other layers of this that we don't even know about yet that we probably never will know about because Ward Manuel's gone and he got his little paycheck and we probably won't hear from him again.
Yeah, and we could keep going. Let's put a pin in this. Let's not circle down the drain with Ward. Let's move on.
Yes, sir.
That's a big number, big nut. Enjoy it.
So, on to our first main topic of the day, and a tradition unlike any other. The SEC spent most of its SEC media days this past week campaigning about how much harder the SEC is than any other conference and how unfairly they are treated by the college football playoff. So I just had a few quotes I wanted to read just to give everyone an idea of the kind of stuff that they were spewing all week. Their SEC commissioner, Greg Sankey, just a portion of his quote: "No one has created the kind of weekly competition that exists in the Southeastern Conference." Missouri head coach Eli Drinkwitz: "A 9-3 SEC team is navigating a completely different gauntlet than a 10-2 or 11-1 team in another conference. The committee can't look at just win totals on paper." Greg McElroy, former Alabama quarterback, now ESPN talking head: "If a 9-win SEC team with 4 top 15 wins gets left out for a 10-win team with 0 ranked wins, the system is fundamentally penalizing conferences that play harder schedules." And finally, Nick Saban, and this is the quote that really kind of gets me riled up because for such an intelligent man, this quote is just so baseless and garbage. "Everyone makes a big deal out of being able to beat us as in the SEC. That doesn't mean they're better than us, and it doesn't mean just because you win the national championship that you have a better conference. It just means you have one better team." And we can get into exactly what's wrong with that statement because there's a lot of wrong things about it, but from all these quotes, there seem to be kind of, two main opinions floating around that I have equal problems with. First off, it's the fact that, a 9-3 SEC team is better than an 11-1 team in any other conference, and no other conference in the country has this level of competition that the SEC has. And the other point that was more about what Nick Saban's talking about is that the Big Ten isn't actually better than the SEC. They just happen to have had one better team than the conference over the past 3 years. So I want to unpack each of those individually, but before we do, what were your general thoughts on hearing all this stuff come out this week?
Well, I passed on the rage machine gene to you, so I'm concerned. But understand, this is the silly season, right? So we haven't played any games. The World Cup has gone away. For me, wistfully, today's sort of the end of summer with the last stage of the Tour de France. People got to fill up their space. ESPN has content to provide its viewers. They got guys providing them. Secondly, this is the SEC working the refs. They're trying to say, because Texas was 10-3, and they didn't make it. They lost to Ohio State on the road 14-7. They should be in, right? So they're working the refs, meaning the selection committee. That's what they're doing. And I think our very first episode, I should have looked the quote up. You have to, I will grant you, I do believe this, and Sean, did some great research. We have to unpack at some point. And two, which is actually the better conference. Top to bottom, I believe the SEC is better. But that means, I truly believe this, you have to look. You mean you're telling me Arkansas is better than Purdue? That Mississippi State's better than Northwestern? That Vanderbilt, who's probably going to be very mediocre this year, is better than Rutgers, right? Because they're 4-8 and Rutgers is 7-5. You have to put a lot of stock in Arkansas and South Carolina. Yes, and Florida, because Florida's been very mediocre in the last 2 years. And dear listeners, they thrashed Archie Friedenhofer's team in October of last year. Thrashed them. Okay? You want to say, oh, that was a dangerous Florida team. Okay? My fantasy is this.
That was the same Florida team that lost to South Florida, by the way.
Yeah, I know. What were they, 4-8 last year?
Yeah,
7
that.
Yeah, they were me, and I don't hate on Florida. I don't hate on the SEC. But pack your bags up, and instead of playing West Carolina, the Citadel, Samford, come to Columbus in November. Travel to Ann Arbor. Go to Illinois. Go to Minnesota. Go to Piscataway. Play a road game in November that's meaningful against the Big Ten. Yeah, and you know what? Here it is, Sean. Here's my metaphor. I thought about this on my swimming over the Cooper River this morning. You know who the SEC is? Got to guess,
No.
Sean?
No.
They're the Argentina of the Power Four. Because the whole melee that happened post-game, you know what that was about? Argentina was pissed off at Laporte for basically saying, yeah, we know we're going to get a tough game from Argentina. They sometimes foul really hard, and there's a message in their fouls, and they've had the better of the refereeing. All of that is true. Anybody blind people who can't hear or see knew Argentina was getting the better of the calls. They were pissed and started throwing haymakers because Laporte had the audacity to talk about Argentina before they played them. And Argentina went out with a whimper because they couldn't, and were pissed because they couldn't win the game. You want to shut people up, FCC? Go get a ring. Go get them. Don't lose to Indiana 35-3. Don't show up like a bad batch of Kool-Aid when you're playing Oklahoma and you're playing Alabama. And you have one of the worst second halves that any team's ever had in the history of second halves, whatever sport. Don't do it. A&M, don't blow a game against Miami and look like you don't belong. Just stop it with that rubbish.
Yeah, it's just a constant, just discrediting of actual football games played on the field is what really gets under my skin with the SEC, where they're talking about all the hypothetical games they would win against teams in other conferences rather than the games they are actually losing on the field.
I want, if they put your money where this SEC, Alabama's doing it. Like next year, Ohio State's playing Alabama, assuming that game stays on the schedule. Benefits no one, which is a shame. But,
Yeah, no, you made some good points. And before I get into, I'm going to just credit some of what they were saying on SEC Media Day. But before I do, you are right. I'm not trying to say that the SEC is a bad conference. Top to bottom, they're very good. Top to bottom, they're still probably the best conference in the country. But that's the disconnect is happening where the SEC thinks that they are playing, quasi NFL football, and every other conference is playing two-hand touch. And like the difference between the SEC and the Big Ten, if there is, it's marginal. The standard of college football is played in the Big Ten right now. That is a fact that no one can try to argue, even people in the SEC. Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana are the three best programs in college football. They are the three best teams in college football, and they should be in the preseason top 5 for that reason. If you look at the SEC, Georgia is the SEC's only elite team that I could throw up there, even close to Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana. Georgia has dominated the SEC. They've won back-to-back SEC championships. The SEC championship the past 2 seasons have been a blowout by the hands of Georgia, and they've only lost 2 games over the past 2 seasons. And so then outside of the elite, the SEC does have a lot of really good teams. Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, A&M, Oklahoma. Those are really good teams, really good programs that I wouldn't want Ohio State playing on any given Sunday. But this is where the disconnect comes with the SEC versus what they think of their conference versus what the reality is they think that teams like Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Missouri, LSU, South Carolina, Florida, Auburn, they think all of those teams are really, really good top 25 playoff caliber teams. But in reality, all of those teams I just listed, from Tennessee all the way to Auburn and Florida, they are more comparable to Nebraska, Washington, Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota. Sure, a lot of those SEC teams are bigger brands because they've had generally more successful 21st centuries. But if you just look at the past 5 years, those teams I listed in the Big Ten, those teams I listed in the SEC are virtually the same. And we have results on the field to prove it. You look at what Iowa's done. They lost to 3 against Missouri in 2024, and they beat Vanderbilt last year. Illinois has back-to-back wins over South Carolina and Tennessee the past 2 seasons. And there's more evidence of that, but the SEC thinks that all of these teams are great. And sure, a road trip to Gainesville is no easy win, but they think it's, the same as going on the road to a top 25 team like it was in 2008. But in reality, a road trip to Gainesville is not that much different than a road trip to Minnesota or a road trip to Nebraska. So you can't just say these teams that have been living around 500 for the past 5 years is a quality opponent just because they're a bigger brand or have better recruiting rankings. That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. And they don't really, I'd argue they don't have a bigger brand. Jed Fish in Washington. That team, I'd argue, put them up against Oklahoma last year, put them up against Texas, put them up against Tennessee. They're beating them. especially if they play them in Seattle. They're beating them. And you know what, Greg, of all the people you quoted, the one person I cannot stand, Sankey's a genius. He ran circles around Kevin Warren, but I frankly think any 600-pound wheelchair-bound person could have run circles around Kevin Warren. Okay, he is a great commissioner. He's playing. He's working the refs, no doubt about it. But Greg McElroy's a homer, has always been a homer. He's white Desmond Howard. I don't want to hear a word out of him. The next cogent analysis he does will be his first, just like it will be Desmond Howard's first. Okay? I don't want to hear it from them. I don't, but we're going to, because we have state media now. Just like we have state media in our politics, we've got it in our college football. Fox is going to shill for the Big Ten and the Big 12. We've talked about this before. And the ESPN's going to shill for the SEC and the ACC. That's just a fact of life. The conference that should be really annoyed at this is the ACC. You know, they had a team in the championship game last year.
Yeah.
SEC didn't.
Well, the SEC has 0 college football playoff wins over the past 3 seasons. And that's what upsets me about Nick Saban's point, is that, like, it's just like the Big Ten has stumbled into a championship the past 3 seasons, and the SEC was right there. We just, they had a wrong bounce of a football, but they're so close to winning a championship. No, the SEC has 0 college football playoff wins against non-SEC teams the past 3 years. Georgia, the team that still dominated the SEC, has 0 college football playoff wins the past 2 seasons. And so this isn't the case of just one team happening to be better. Like, the SEC is not showing up in these games, and that's where it irritates me to hear a guy as smart and respected as Nick Saban using his platform to just spew this stuff that's just, like, what he's saying is not reflective of the results we're seeing on the field. And that's what it all comes back to, is the SEC is trying to come up with all of these, roundabout ways to talk about how strong the conference is, and none of them pertain to the actual games on the field. And that's what we just keep hearing about the SEC, is these hypothetical things explaining how strong the conference is, and it's all anything about the results on the field. And that's what it irritates me, because at the end of the day, the games have to matter.
Amen, preacher.
Because, like you mentioned,
amen.
Like, the ACC is the one that should be upset about this. And listen, like, Ohio State, they have the toughest schedule in college football this year. They could go 9-3 this year, and I will still stand pat that Ohio State's better than every, Big 12 team, for example, at 9-3. But you can fast forward to the end of the year. If we go through the schedule and we lose 3 games, I'm not going to be sitting there in December pounding my chest saying that 9-3 Ohio State deserves to be in over 11-1 BYU because we had such a hard schedule. At the end of the day, I don't care how hard your schedule is. I don't care if you have to run a gauntlet of 2019 LSU, 2020 Alabama, 2005 USC, like, these teams just spawn on your schedule. I don't care how hard it is. If you lose 3+ games in a 12-game regular season, you just aren't good enough to compete for a national championship. And that's what it comes down to. Take care of your games, win on the field, and stop complaining. Because that's like, you don't hear the Big Ten going all rah-rah for each other. You don't see Ohio State and Michigan holding hands in the corner being like, look how good we are. Like, it's just, I don't understand why it's so weird in the SEC and why everyone has to have their thumbs, up each other's asses like that.
Well, on that point, I will be pounding the table if Ohio State should go 9-3 and BYU's 11-1. I will be pounding the table. I do want to thank Greg McElroy for working the refs for the Big Ten, because their football team, Michigan, has a really tough schedule this year.
Yeah. Washington too. We keep talking about Washington. They got a tough schedule.
Yeah. So one of those 3 teams goes 9-3. I want them in the tourney over a 10-2 Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Alabama's got a tough schedule too. If they manage to go 10-2, I don't know if I'd push that hard. But exactly, they're like making this an SEC versus everyone thing, but in reality, it should be an SEC and Big Ten versus everyone thing, because those conferences are so close, they're so comparable. And it's weird that
Right.
the Big Ten is, yeah, they're silent. They're just taking care of their business, and the SEC is like, we're treated
Well,
unfairly.
well, you are going to Big Ten Media Days is this week. I suspect you're going to get a torrent of the same sort of
I'll
flavor
be interested. I'll be really
popsicle.
interested to see what comes out of that because I would be surprised if you see. I think Brett Bielema is the only coach in the Big Ten that's going to be going rah rah for the conference because he does that a lot. Other than him, I don't expect anyone to be doing
Oh, I
tooting
think
their
they're all
horn,
going
but
to
we'll
do it.
see.
I think you're wrong, but I think they'll do it just like 3 rings, baby.
Yeah,
3 rings.
true.
That's what they're going to say.
And I mean,
And
that's
and the SEC being the Argentina of the Power Four is going to get irate.
yeah.
Paul Feinbaum, his ears are actually going to grow on ESPN. He'll be flying off the set. He'll be Dumbo. That's what's going to happen.
I'd love
Greg
that.
McElroy, his head is going to shrink. He's going to look like somebody. Well, he's going to look like somebody put a voodoo hex on his head. At the end of the day, the champion hosts the mug, the cup, the crystal ball, whatever the hell it is. Win a championship, guys. Win a championship.
Yeah. I'll be very interested to see what comes out of Big Ten Media Days, and we'll probably be updating our listeners whenever in our next episode on that. But another quick thing that came out of SEC Media Days, other than tooting their own horn, was talking about the possibility of leaving the NCAA. This has been going on for, I don't know, a year plus now, but they did have some, talk specifically about the possibility. Commissioner Greg Sankey called the rumors of the SEC leaving very real. Kirby Smart talked about that he's been on this train of leaving the NCAA for years. And so I'll start this by saying I'm not against college football as a whole separating from the NCAA. I think the sport's outgrown the NCAA and all the other sports underneath it. I figure that it could only benefit us to find a new way to govern the sport and move it forward. Um, uh, but I guess I'm kind of confused with this, and I think maybe you could probably shed some light on this, is why the SEC is kind of framing this as an SEC only thing, almost as if they wouldn't want to separate if it meant like the Big 12 and ACC schools are coming with them too. So, because there's 67 Power 4 teams and then a dozen or so group of 6 schools that, compete really highly at that level and take their program that seriously. So I could see a scenario where we have 75, 85 schools separating from the NCAA, creating their own league and really benefiting from it. But I'm just confused. Why is the SEC framing this as like an exclusively SEC thing?
Well, again, Sean the Rage Machine. Let me restate. Sean the SEC Rage Machine. I didn't take it as the SEC framing it like we're going to take our ball and go. I mean, that clearly was what they were saying. I'm not interpreting it that way. Again, they're trying to work the refs here, and that is the Big Ten. They don't like what the Big Ten's doing in terms of proposing a 16 team or a 24 team playoff. They don't like it. And they don't like the framework. If they could get comfortable with it, they don't like the fact that Pertidis from the Big Ten commissioner is driving it in a certain direction. And the ACC might be on board with that direction that it's going. And the Big 12 might be on board with it. So they're a little rubbed the wrong way. But what I do like about what they're doing, positing is, guys, we need some regulation. We need some rules. Even though they have a school in their own conference in Texas, it's just, like a drunken sailor on leave in Bangkok, writing checks whatever brothel they walk into. They want some, and that's good. That's good. They are being very vocal, and I'll give Kirby a lot of credit. He's being very vocal that the system, and Saban's been very vocal. We need a better system. We need some governance, and somebody needs to figure this out. And we don't want Cody Campbell from Texas Tech driving the legislation around that, because the current legislation that's up on Capitol Hill, which is not going to pass, is rubbish. Right? It's just complete rubbish.
Yeah.
And it would never hold up in front of the Supreme Court. It's bad legislation. But they're the only ones really advocating for some change and some governance here. Partially because I don't think their NIL game is as strong as the Big Ten's or some schools in the Big 12. We mentioned Cody and Texas Tech, or Notre Dame's. That's part of the problem. But I applaud them for trying to get something, some message through that we need a better way here, because we do. When Dusty May left, there were a number, the guy who covers Michigan for The Athletic wrote a really good piece. He said, this is a symptom of the sport. You're losing good coaches to the NFL and to the NBA because of it's really hard to coach a major college team in football or basketball. Probably also true in volleyball, hockey, soccer, whatever. Really hard nowadays to do that when you have free agency every year and you have kids expecting to make money and not off their name, image, and likeness, off of these foundations and clubs that people donate to. It's really hard. But Michigan said we'll act in the best interests of Michigan when Dusty May left. And that's not a knock against Michigan. That's what we have, whatever the number you just said with Power 4 schools and whatever, 67 or some such thing. You have 67, this sport's balkanized. You have 67 schools doing whatever is best for them. Oftentimes not even in the best interest of their conference. They're doing what's best for them. So you do need a cop that's going to say, Because in the NFL or the NBA, it's, you got to have some level of self-interest, but we're a collective. It's called the NBA. It's called the NFL. It's called Major League Baseball. We're all part of this whole. You don't have that in college sports. And that's the problem. That's what the SEC, I don't believe you'll hear a lot out of Ryan Day.
No, the Big Ten's been so quiet about this. I mean, Kevin Petiti, the commissioner, too, like he's been asked about it a lot, the possibility about moving from the NCAA, and he's always just like, nope, not happening. We have no interest in that. So it is like, I guess, yeah, you're right. I mean, shout out to the SEC for at least, getting the conversation started, being like, hey, like we might be in our best interest to move away from the NCAA.
It would be the SEC at the end of the day is not going to do it. If they were to do it, you really think ESPN is going to support that move? They didn't pay the billions they're paying to have you guys not be part of the sport. They didn't pay billions to broadcast your basketball
Well,
games.
I guess they're not doing it by themselves. Right.
Well, that's what they're talking about. They'd break off and have their own championship.
But yeah, there's no way they do that if no one else is in there with them. Because honestly, would?
That's what they talked about last week.
Yeah.
That was the talking point. We're just going to do it. We'll break away, whether we have other people to join us or not. And that there's just no way that's happening. Come on. I mean, that's, again, silly season talk.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
And honestly, while you were talking, it brought up a thought in my head. Like, if they decide to break apart from the NCAA, and I'm talking about like all the major conferences, major football schools, at that point, why do we even need conferences anymore? Like, it's not 1950 anymore. We don't take buses to games. Like, everyone recruits nationally. Like, if we have, 75, 80, 85 schools in a new league, why do we need these conferences anymore? Like, I'm sure they're going to persist because that's where the money is, and these organizations exist to make money. But it's just, the more I think about it, the more is like, the concept of a conference in 2026, the more you think about it, it's kind of like a dated idea.
And that it's anachronistic. I'd agree here because I like to toot our own horn, mine in particular, and because all I rarely do is talk about bikes or college football. I remember being in meetings with people in New Orleans, early 2000s. I remember meeting bankers in New Orleans, early 2000s. And this is at the period when the Big Ten was much smaller. And the only team worth a doggone in the entire Big Ten was Ohio State. Okay? And the myth was, big, slow, and dumb, right? Trestle ball, all that. I had to deal with that. And, people saying how slow Ohio State is. I'm like, let's just line up and do a relay and call that for the national championship. Let's just do that because I'm pretty confident my team will show off well. You guys want to do that? That was my first point. But my second point was, like, guys, if I was the commissioner of the Big Ten and the SEC right now, I'd call each other and say, let's just get this thing done. Let's merge. We don't need Notre Dame. And at the time, you didn't have Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC. We don't need them. Let's just do our own thing. And then when the ACC wants on board or the Big 12 wants on board, fine, we'll take them. You get you increase the size of the pie by joining. Yep, good job, guys. But you're getting a smaller nut than us. That's what I was saying that 20 or 25 years ago. That's going to happen.
I mean, I hope it does. I feel like that, but I feel like that'd be better for the sport at the end of the day, is just getting all the schools that are equally invested in one place, creating their own rules, their own governing board, and just, essentially creating a new league. But the powers that be generally are not making decisions for what's best for the sport. They're making decisions of what will make them the most money. And the way it's set up right
the
now,
individual school's the most money.
yeah,
Key there, and you said it. That model is only better with the proper governance. You have to have a sheriff with a badge and a gun and that can do something. If you find the line and cross it, there's punishment. And you have to have a sheriff and a badge that ensures we're going to maximize our revenue for everyone and grow the game. Not just grow our own.
yeah, not just grow our wallets, but grow the game.
Grow the game and therefore grow our wallets. The way the NFL does, the way the NBA does, the way Major League Baseball does, the way the NHL does, the way the PGA does. All of the successfully run sports organizations have kind of a social, capitalistic aspect to it where we're rowing in the same direction. Right now you have 67 schools rowing in 67 different directions.
Yeah, no,
that has to
perfectly said.
And I applaud the SEC for bringing that to the fore. The Big Ten is clearly behind on that because I think they think they're in a better spot right now than the SEC. So
yeah, and they're probably sitting there like, why would we change? We're making a boatload of money. We're winning championships. Everything's great.
Yes, that's exactly it. Why would we change? Three championships in football, a championship in basketball. We got great hockey teams. We have great lacrosse teams. We have great soccer teams.
Wrestling.
Wrestling. Yeah, wrestling and women's volleyball. Why would we change?
It does just feel like even if the Big Ten got on board, it still feels like wishful thinking at this point. Like, we gotta align on rules, align on punishments for those rules, align on who is the governing board, and find someone or a group of people that doesn't have an affiliation or a bias with one conference or one group of schools over the other. And yeah, it's a great idea, but the more you think about all the steps that go into what would have to be done to get all these schools on board and into another league and set up that league, it does feel like we are still so far from that coming to fruition.
No, we're because it's been balkanized, and this is the only organization that's more Byzantine and probably ineffectual than college sports right now is the United Nations.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, cool. I mean, again, Big Ten Media Days are coming up, and I'm sure they'll be asked about this as well. So it'll be interesting to see, get the Big Ten's kind of perspective on everything that's going on. But I think we can move on to our next topic, unless you had any final thoughts on SEC Media Days.
No, let's go, baby. Come on.
Sweet. So for this one, I put together just a quick top 5 of positions in the Big Ten. So I have my top 5 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and defenses. I wanted to run through those real quick. I have a few honorable mentions for each one that didn't quite make the top 5, but felt wrong not mentioning them. This is just kind of to gear up for the 2026 season. Fall camp is starting in a week or two. I know our football fans out there are gearing up for the new season, so this is to help inform our listeners kind of who the best players in the Big Ten will be. So I'll run through my list, and then I'll kick it to you, see if you have thoughts, edits, or just questions, because who knows, maybe I'm going to be informing you with some of this.
Oh, I think you're going to be informing me a lot.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll start off with quarterbacks, and considering we talked about Big Ten quarterbacks a few episodes ago in our quarterback show, this one should be especially quick. But my top 5, Julian Sain 1, Dante Moore at Oregon at number 2. We already talked about that quarterback episode. Those are the clear top 2 quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and if you put anyone else up there, you're just fishing for hot takes. If there is a quarterback that's worth arguing to be in that top 2, I think it's my third quarterback, Josh Huber from Indiana, transferring over from TCU. I talked about it in that quarterback show. He has incredible natural talent. He's a really good athlete and a rocket for an arm. He does need to clean up his mistakes. He's had 24 interceptions over the past 2 seasons, but Kurt Cignetti in this offense gets the benefit of the doubt based off of what they've done over the past 2 seasons. I think Josh Hoover is going to be able to run that RPO offense, and he'll be the quarterback for what should be another top 10 offense in college football. So I think he's an easy number 3. And my number 4 and 5 quarterback, I took some time. I was, waffling on who should be 4 and who should be 5. I settled on Jayden Maiava at USC at number 4, mainly because he's just a really solid quarterback, nothing more. He is an above-average athlete, but, doesn't have game-breaking athleticism. He's consistently accurate, but he doesn't have a huge arm, and his deep accuracy, I think, leaves something to be desired. I think the first-round comps that he's getting from some people are insane. I don't see him as a first-round NFL quarterback, but he is a really steady quarterback. He's on his 3rd year with the program, 2nd year as a starter at USC, and I think he should put up really good numbers for them. And then number 5, who I was debating putting at number 4, would be Damon Williams at Washington. I think he's the closest thing to Braxton Miller that I've seen since Braxton Miller. I think my biggest concern with him, though, is his performance in big games. He played really, really poorly last year against Michigan and against Oregon. So, and I out of all the quarterbacks I've listed, I wouldn't be surprised if Damon Williams ends up being number 2 or number 3 at the end of the season. But because Washington does have a really tough schedule, we already talked about the fact that Damon Williams planned to transfer elsewhere, and then Washington had to bring legal in to make sure he stayed because he had already agreed to stay with them. So that makes me a little bit nervous. I don't know if we can really count on him taking a huge step forward if his head isn't 100% in it. So I could see him being number 2 or 3 at the end of the season because he is that talented, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see him fall off entirely just because I'm not sure how much improvement we can bank on, and the schedule is really, really tough. So those are my top 5. My honorable mentions would be Malik Washington at Maryland. I don't know how many people listening to this podcast are planning to watch any Maryland Terps games, the football games this year. But if you need a reason, Malik Washington is it. He is more talented than Jayden Maiava. It's Maryland, so I don't know the kind of numbers he's going to put up. And then my last honorable mention would be Nico Iamaleava at UCLA. People forget that, he was a 5-star stud recruit. He had a big season at Tennessee. And I honestly think this season at UCLA, with the JMU coaching staff they're bringing over, some additions they made in the portal, I think this is the best situation he's had in his career. The spotlight is off. He's finally got some talent around him. I think he has a competent head coach. So I'm excited about what Nico could do. I think he seems to me the kind of quarterback that does his best when the spotlight is off of him. So I'm excited to see what he can do this season. Any thoughts on my quarterback list?
I would have put Damon at number 3. I would have.
I wouldn't hate that.
So, and I don't know, I'm going to call him out again. I don't know if this is how much I like Nancy and Ben is driving this, but I love Jed Fish, and I do like Damon. He is talented. You can just see him, though, last year, he wasn't quite processing things as quickly as he needs to. And when the clock gets sped up and he can't run, he has trouble figuring that out. I believe with a good coach like Jed Fish, he's going to figure it out. You didn't mention Rocco Becht. Might have had Rocco in there, but I agree. I think Nico, on your call out of Nico, just on talent alone, like it just 40 times, bench presses, who can throw the ball the farthest. Nico's probably the best quarterback in the Big Ten at those things. And his situation wasn't as bad as what the players in Ann Arbor faced last year, but that was kind of like a rumpus room in LA. Changing coaches as early as they did. They now have an adult in the room. And if there's one thing we should know is that coaching at JMU, it's a cradle of coaches right now. It is. So I look for him I wouldn't put him in my top 5. I'd agree with you, but I think he could be number 6 with a bullet, as it were.
Yeah.
The thing about Hoover, I get it. I was thinking about this the other day as well, because I saw some clip picked up in my feed that somebody was talking about Hoover, and all he has to do is be 90% of Mendoza, and Indiana's going back to back. And the more I think about that, yeah, that might be true. But even with the Heisman Trophy winner, it takes a lot of luck to win championships. You got to be good, but luck. And so look, you had a come from behind late fourth quarter win for IU against Iowa. It's a house of horrors there for visiting road teams usually, but they won late on a Mendoza to Surratt touchdown. Great. Then you had the incredible last second catch against Penn State. If that's little Sean, you and I both know this. 1 inch in the other direction, Indiana doesn't win that game. Right?
Yep.
Then you have Ohio State's utter incompetence on short yardage situations inside Indiana's 20-yard line. That's the reason Ohio State lost that game. Yep, Indiana, I'm not taking anything away from them. But they lost that game, Ohio State did, because Brian Hartline was the OC.
Yeah. And then even the national championship game, I mean,
well,
Miami.
Man, I was going there.
Yeah.
Like, Fernando Mendoza stood on his freaking head on that touchdown run. There are 90% of Jordan Hoover ain't making the end zone. So part of me says I can see Indiana going back to back because I think this guy may have better arm talent than Mendoza from what I've read. I haven't seen him. I didn't go back and watch TCU tape. I'm not that insane. I'm not going to do it. But I don't know if Hoover's worthy of number 3. I'm just saying Indiana, I think it's going to be hard for them to replicate what they did last year, but they have a generational coach.
Yeah. And I guess I should have caveated too. I guess the rankings I'm putting together are more so projecting what I think the top 5 will be at the end of the season. So, preseason, exactly. Like Josh Hoover does have question marks. But I just feel like at the end of the year he's gonna put together the season that's worthy of number 3. But you're right about their chances of winning a national championship. Like even their first game against Oregon in Autzen, that was a close game down late in the fourth quarter, and then like Miami had the ball in the national championship with a chance to go take a very late lead, and then Carson Beck throws a duck into double coverage and ends the game. So it is just so hard to win a national championship. It's hard to project Indiana being as good as they were.
Right. And I think you're another good call out on Indiana, the road game against Oregon. We were driving to Hood River, and you had that on your phone, and as we peeked at it, it definitely looked like Indiana was the bigger, stronger, more physical team, which was stunning to me at the time. But that game was really, really close, and Dante Moore played horribly. And actually, Mendoza didn't play very well either. He had the pick 6 that gave Oregon the lead.
Yeah, but he played great on the ensuing drive that went and then got to and took the lead.
Correct.
Which is again like why Fernando Mendoza was such a unique quarterback. It wasn't his traits that made him great. It was like when you need him to play great, he's going to deliver his best. I mean, it was the throw against Ohio State over Jermaine Matthews to clinch the game essentially after we missed that field goal. Like that might have been his best throw of the season.
Yes, he had he in the clutch. Great point. And so Indiana with all of that going for him, and I do believe Mendoza was generational quarterback in that regard. When the chips are on the table and you're all in, we've talked about this with the NFL quarterbacks. You need to win. He delivered. So let's see how that plays out. I would put Damon Williams at 3, Hoover 4, and good call out on Malik Washington. Again, he's got to improve his accuracy. But man, that dude has a cannon. 70-yard touchdown passes in the air are not going to be out of the norm in College Park.
Yeah, they might actually be watchable this year. But I can move into running backs. Number 1, just might rustle some feathers for you. I have Jordan Marshall at Michigan. I just think he's crazy talented. And of all the problems that Michigan has had with their program and especially their offense over the past couple of years, they do just continue to have a great running back room. And honestly, like if Jordan Marshall didn't have to leave the game against us last year, I don't think they win, but I do think that game goes very differently. I think he's an incredible running back, and he's going to get peppered with touches all year. And I will say I'm also really scared of their freshman Savion. I don't know if it's Hyder or Hitter, that 5-star running back that they got. He looks like an absolute freak. So I think he and Jordan Marshall together, it is going to be a problem for defenses stopping that run game. Number 2, Antoine Raymond, Rutgers, first team All Big Ten last year. And Rutgers, quietly cranking out great running backs. They have Kyle Monungai, who's having a great season last year as a rookie in Chicago, and Isaiah Pacheco. So Rutgers quietly cranking out great running backs. Number 3, I have Bo Jackson. And I think it's more so just his situation why I have him number 3 instead of number 1 or 2. Like, the fact is he will be splitting carries with Isaiah West and maybe even Legend Bay or Jacoby Jackson, the transfer we got from Florida, who's more of that kind of short yardage third down back. And also, we're going to pass a lot more than Rutgers or Michigan. So I just don't know if Bo Jackson will have the touches to put him up there with Marshall and Raymond. Number 4, I had Kobe Martin at Indiana. He had over 500 yards at 6.5 yards per carry last year as their third option. He steps into a leading role. And again, Kurt Cignetti and his offense gets the benefit of the doubt. I think as the bell cow, Kobe Martin's going to have a huge season for them. And then number 5, I had King Miller at USC. He had 1,100 total yards last year. He's a sturdy downhill runner that can really hold up well during Big Ten play. And I think this is going to be Lincoln Riley's best rush attack he's had since he was at Oklahoma. And Lincoln Riley, I think he gets he's best known for his passing attack and, producing those quarterbacks he did at Oklahoma. But at the end of the day, he really likes to lean in on his running game as well. And like I said, I think this is going to be his best rushing attack, and King Miller is going to be a big reason why. And then a few honorable mentions. Oregon actually has 2 running backs that's worth mentioning, Jordan Davison and De'Aaron Hill. And honestly, if you were to be grading running back rooms, Oregon is right there with Michigan and Ohio State as the best running back rooms in all of college football. I just don't have any of their running backs in the top 5 because I just don't know if individually they're a top 5 running back. Like Jordan Davison is a much bigger downhill runner and Hill is the faster, shiftier back. So I think they complement each other really great. I just don't know if either of them are top 5 individually right now because they are both going to be stepping into bigger roles. Kamari Moulton at Iowa, he had 900 yards last year, and he's not the typical mold you think of an Iowa running back like Caleb Johnson or Sean Green. Like, he is freaky fast. The only thing with him is Iowa does lose 4 starters on the offensive line, and Iowa doesn't have a running quarterback this year like they did last year. So it is going to be a lot more on his shoulders. He probably is going to be a good bet for a 1,000-yard season, but I don't know if he's going to be quite as productive on a per-touch basis. Wayne Knight at UCLA, he had 1,800 total yards last year at James Madison, and he's very kind of a Darren Sproles-like build. So it's to be determined if his style can really hold up in a 12-game regular season in the Big Ten, but he is great talent and definitely a name worth knowing, Wayne Knight at UCLA. And finally, another Washington Husky, Jordan Washington. I wanted to mention him because he was a redshirt freshman last year, didn't get a whole lot of touches, but he had 300 rush yards on 8.6 yards per carry. So it's a very small sample size, but he looked electric, kind of like a DeAnthony Thomas-esque running back. And Jed Fish loves to run the ball. He's had Jonah Coleman as his top running back in each of the past 3 seasons. He had him his last year at Arizona, then the past 2 at Washington. So it's really up in the air who's going to take over for him as the lead running back in Jed Fish's offense. But I think Jordan Washington's a good bet for it to be him. And I think he's got the athleticism to have a really special season. So those are my top running backs in the Big Ten for 2026. Any thoughts, edits, or questions there?
Yeah, quite one question is Washington the kid that would come in and spell Coleman most frequently? I'm not asking percentage. I mean, they had a back. I'm assuming it's Washington that when Ohio State played him, I'm like, holy God, that dude is like, he's shot out of a cannon. He's like a bolt of lightning, and he's greased by the Indy pit crew. I mean, he was just, whoa, mama. I want some of what he's got.
Yeah, they had 2 running backs that kind of split the backup duty. So he was probably the one you're talking about because the other one was Adam Muhammad, who is kind of a bigger running back. I don't think he was the one that was wowing you with his
They had
speed.
one of those 2 backs is something. I definitely would have had as a room. I would have had Oregon up there as a room, not as individuals, because they. I think the one thing I'd agree with Jordan Marshall at 1. He deserves it. The thing about them is A, durability. B, everybody's going to, I think you play Michigan, you're putting 8 in the box. You got it.
Yeah, and Michigan has not been great at kind of alleviating the workload on their running backs. They have no problem giving their
That
running
and
backs 30 carries.
that's the point I was going to. I think Whittingham is smart enough. I don't think he's had to do this. Whereas Ryan Day, part of the reason they played slow last year, I think part of it was to frustrate us fans. But he knows it's a 16 or 17 game season. And you're right. And the reason he got Carlos Lachlan, the reason he went out and got Judkins is because he needed a running backs coach who understood that and could get the best out of multiple backs. The guy we had that's now at Ann Arbor wasn't good at that. He wasn't good at keeping Trevion Henderson healthy. He wasn't. This is an NFL schedule we're talking about. You need to manage your roster like an NFL. So I think Jordan Marshall stay at number one at the end of the year. I think Bo Jackson may surpass him. Okay.
Yeah.
And you didn't mention somebody I would have mentioned, and I'm going to mention, and I think it might have been word enough for a really crowded room. I think James Peoples was Ohio State's best running back for a period there down the stretch. And I think he could be really special in Happy Valley. I do. And I think he's going to be in your top 5 by the end of the year.
Interesting. I will mention Penn State also did bring in Carson Hansen from Iowa State, and he's kind of a bigger, big bruising white guy. Nothing too crazy, but he will be competing for touches there.
Yeah, I think Matt Campbell's a smart enough coach to understand. I need to. What? The landing's already there. He's been there for years. This is an NFL schedule. Need to manage it as such. And Ryan Day's been there for years. So I don't know that Michigan's there, and Iowa. I mean, I hope Iowa's watchable this year. I just hope that's for you, Iowa fans, that they're watchable. I got nothing else on the running backs.
I guess one other guy that might be worth mentioning is Darius Taylor at Minnesota. I mean, he is, just talent alone, he is probably a top 5 running back. He had a crazy true freshman year a few years ago, but he's just struggled to stay healthy. So if he's healthy and plays all 12 games, I think there's really real possibility he ends up here.
DJ's going to ride that horse.
Yeah.
He will ride. He will ride the Darius horse.
Staying healthy for a full regular season at this point seems more hopeful than anything. But I can get into receivers then. Number 1, Jeremiah Smith. Don't think anything else needs to be said about that. Number 2, I have Charlie Becker at Indiana. He had 700 yards at 20 yards per catch last year as their number 3 receiver. He had that game clincher over Jermaine Matthews, like I mentioned in the Big Ten title game. And he also, forgotten catch, he had a crazy sideline catch in their game winner against Penn State to set up then that great game winner. So he's a really great receiver. He's shifty in space, but he's also a great jump ball receiver. So I think as their number 1 option, he's going to put up a crazy year. Number 3, Evan Stewart at Oregon. And this one, I'm surprised I'm hearing nothing about Evan Stewart this year. He was, former 5-star guy. He had a great 2024 season. He tore us up when we played Oregon in Austin.
Sure did.
He is the reason that Denzel Burke went from like a fringe first-round guy to like an early day 3 pick. He was supposed to be their number 1 receiver going into last year, but had a season-ending injury in fall camp, didn't play at all. And now DeCorian Moore is kind of getting talk as Oregon's number 1 receiver. I've never been impressed with him. I think Evan Stewart is like a legitimate NFL receiver. And I think he's going to step back into that role, and I think he's going to have a great year for Oregon as their number 1 receiver, assuming he's fully healthy. I haven't seen anything contrary to that, but that's the only explanation I can think of is why I'm not hearing anything about him. So Evan Stewart at Oregon, number 3. Number 4, KJ Duff, over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns at nearly 19 yards a catch last year. Should have another All Big Ten season this year, assuming Rutgers has someone that can throw the forward pass. And number 5, another Washington Husky, Desmond Roebuck. Washington's quietly been producing NFL wide receivers as well as anyone not named Ohio State the past few years. Roebuck had nearly 600 yards and 7 touchdowns as a true freshman last year, and now he's going to be asked to step up and be their main target this year. So I think he has a big season in for him. And a couple honorable mentions. Andrew Marsh at Michigan, transferring over from Michigan State. On talent alone, I would argue Andrew Marsh should be a top 5 receiver, but the fact that he's playing for a team that might struggle to throw for 2,000 total yards doesn't get him into the top 5. Tanook Hines at USC. Again, over 500 yards as a true freshman last year. And USC has a mass exodus of talent out of that wide receiver room. So he's going to be counted on to have a big year this year. And then Colin Dixon at Illinois, same deal. 600 yards last year as their kind of number 2 or 3 option. And so now he's going to step up as their number 1. So another name to know, Colin Dixon at Illinois. Any thoughts there?
No, I just love the way you keep calling out RU. We're speaking truth. So I would say it is going to be very interesting to see how Becker at IU adjusts to being the number 1, because last year they had what was this, Omario, and you had
Yeah, Omar
Surratt.
Cooper and Elijah Surratt.
Yeah, those two, so he was 3rd. You're gonna double and chip Omar Cooper, and you're gonna put probably your number 1. If it's your number 1 corner isn't on him, it's gonna be on Elijah Surratt, right? You're not gonna let those 2 guys beat you. So I bet if you go back and look at film, he was up against a lot of 2nd and 3rd and 4th corners, and nickel and dime sort of stuff, and he did great. But he's going to be the number 1 or 2 option now, and he's a known commodity. It'll be interesting. And Evan Stewart, great call out, fantastic. People forgotten about him because he was injured all of last year. He really seemed to be getting his stuff together in 24. And you're right that he just absolutely drilled Ohio State in 24. And he appeared to be the best wide receiver on the field. And Jeremiah played in that game. So good call out there.
Love it. So you can put a bow on this now going into top 5 defenses. Number 1, I have to admit, I'm a little biased here. It's Ohio State. We lose a ton of talent, but I just think with Matt Patricia at the helm and the way we've recruited on the defensive side of the football, there's no reason to think that Ohio State should take a huge step back. Our secondary is still crazy talented, and our linebacker room, although inexperienced, I love the talent we have there. So again, a little bias here, but I have to put Ohio State 1. Indiana number 2. Again, like, do they just kind of get the benefit of the doubt based off of the defenses we've seen in Bloomington the past 2 seasons? They bring in a transfer from Kansas State and Josh Burnham from Notre Dame to retool their edge rush, and Penn State transfer AJ Harris comes in to help replenish their secondary. And AJ Harris is someone I was really high on going into the 2024 season. He was supposed to kind of take Porter's spot as their Joey Porter Jr., his spot as their top cornerback. Didn't quite develop the way I thought he would, but I think he's great talent, and I think he's someone that'll really shine in Bloomington. I have Oregon, number 3. They have a ton of talent on the defensive line. They have that Mateo Uyunglele, DJ's brother, who's probably going to be a first-round draft pick. And Brandon Finney was a top 50 player in the 2025 recruiting class, ended up starting for them at cornerback. I think he's in for a big season, so Oregon's going to have another great defense. I have Michigan at number 4. Jair Hill and Rod Moore are 2 names to know in their secondary. They're starting cornerback and safety. Great experience, potential All-Americans. They do have some question marks up front, but John Henry Daly comes over from Utah, and he had 11.5 sacks last year. So, again, Kyle Whittingham, University of Michigan, you can kind of pencil in him to have a really good defense. And then I have number 5, Iowa. Again, like, you can just pencil Kirk Ferentz and Iowa in to have a good defense no matter who they lose. And then my honorable mentions were Penn State. I think Tony Rojas at linebacker is a potential All-Big Ten guy, and they bring in Marcus Neal from Iowa State, who's a potential All-American safety. And then Washington, I think they are the only school other than the big 3, Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon, to show up on all of these lists, even if it's just for a honorable mention. But I think they're going to have a great defense. I forgot that Ryan Walters is their defensive coordinator, former Purdue head coach, and he was the architect behind Illinois' defense in like 2021-22, where they were producing a few first-round picks. So he's a great defensive coordinator. And I think they have one of the most experienced defenses in the Big Ten. They have linebacker Zuri Alexander, who's potentially an All-American, cornerback Emmanuel Carnley. He's a lockdown transfer from Virginia. So they got some talent there too. I think the more I look at this, Washington team, the more I'm kind of excited about their 2026 prospects. But any thoughts on those top 5 defenses?
Well, first of all, Claude, you just nail the Polynesian last names. I can't. I look at that and I lust for the vowels because I don't. You and I don't have them in our last name, but I can't say any of them, and they just roll off your tongue like you're a poet. So props to you on there. I would say I'm not an AJ Harris fan. Now one season, and I hate to call their kids still, but was not impressed at all with this season for Penn State last year. I think the Ohio State wide receivers were eager to line up against him. Um,
Fair.
Almost giggling, like let's go, So now that could be because of the coaching situation, and it deteriorated quickly there in Happy Valley. So I don't want to hold that against him. I'm not so sure he's going to be all that in a bag of chips at Bloomington. And I don't love kids that transfer 2, 3, 4 times, or 2 times is okay. Like you go from one school to another, consider that 2 schools. He's on his 3rd school. Georgia, Penn State, now Indiana. I'm just not a big fan of that, but that's okay. That's the nature of the beast. He's not the Antichrist. Didn't Oregon also get Troy Persich or whatever his name is from
Coy
Minnesota?
Perrick, yeah, the safety from Minnesota that I really wanted Ohio State to get. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
another
he's a
good call.
baller. He's a
Yeah, he's
baller.
going to be replacing Dylan Thieneman.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be as good as Dylan, but he reminds me. Who's the kid who played at Iowa and now is playing for the
Cooper
Eagles?
DeJean.
Yeah, he reminds me a little bit of that. He's not Coop. No one's going to be Cooper DeJean, but he does return punts. He's very athletic. I don't think he reads the game as well as Dylan did. I don't think he reads the game as well as Downs did, but he's a good player. And then, yeah, Ryan Walters. If Ohio State didn't have Matt Patricia, I've always liked Ryan Walters. His defenses are fast, physical, multiple, smart, and just tough. When he's got the right personnel, he makes it hard to do anything. Run, pass,
Yeah, his defenses
punt.
force a lot of turnovers too. And I think he kind of falls in that Matt Patricia bucket of just because you weren't a great head coach doesn't mean you're not a great defensive coordinator.
Right. He's a baller. Seattle hit it out of the park getting him. They may not be able to keep him, UW, but he's a fantastic defensive coordinator. And so
Yeah.
they have a great foundational piece in Ryan Walters. The Huskies do. And frankly, I'd love to have the West Coast axis of the Big Ten tilt a little bit away from Oregon and have people start talking about them for the playoffs this year. I think that'd be fantastic.
No, I think that's kind of a good trade because I just had a few like main takeaways I got from doing this exercise. And my number one was all about Washington. I mean, they have, I think, pretty easily a top 5 quarterback, running back, and wide receiver in the Big Ten. They have, I mean, maybe not quite a top 5 defense, but certainly one in the top half of the Big Ten. They probably have a top 5 head coach too. And the more I look at this roster, the more excited I do get. It's just a shame because, again, I don't know if we've talked about what their schedule actually has. They have home games against Washington State, Minnesota, Iowa, Penn State, and Indiana, and then road trips to USC, Nebraska, and Oregon. It's a really tough schedule. A lot of those games are winnable, but like I feel like, 8-4 would feel like a good record for this team based off of the record. And it just, this team feels like a better than an 8-4 team. So
I think if they need to be better than 8-4 this year, they do. They need to take a step.
yeah,
Damon's got this is the year of no excuses in Seattle. Take a step, put back up what we're saying about you, about Jed and Ryan, back it up and win a couple of those games that are going to be, would beat USC, beat Oregon. You're in the playoffs. You do that. You take care of the other business. You win those 2 games. You're in the playoff.
Yeah, I think it really does come down to at USC, at Oregon, and then home games against Penn State and Indiana. Like those are
They can
4
beat Penn
really
State.
tough games.
And
They got to
Indiana
go 2
is
and
going to
2.
be, Indiana's going to be hard. We know that, but that's a hard road trip for Indiana, and that stadium's going to be. I mean, Indiana's proved they can win anywhere. So, but that stadium's going to be nearly as loud as Autzen, and just win 2 of those 3 games, guys. It's not going to be easy. You win 2 of those 3, and and don't have any bad losses, you're in the playoff. And I would love America to see how beautiful that stadium is. Home playoff game in December
That'd be
in
really
Seattle.
cool. Yeah, it's just
It'd be great for the sport. It'd be great for the sport, great for the school, great for the conference.
it would. Yeah.
I,
I think
I would look.
Washington's definitely, I mean, one of the key teams to watch in September just to see how good they really can be. A few of my other main takeaways from doing this, Michigan, I think they honestly look like a college football playoff team if it weren't for their quarterback position and what I expect to be a severe lack of downfield passing attack. So it's a shame they invested $8 million in a quarterback that can't throw because they got a good roster. Also, Penn State surprisingly absent from these. I know you shouted out their quarterback and a couple of their running backs, but again, like those are as fringe, honorable mention guys. And so I'm just again, we talked about their schedule and how easy it is, and it's essentially a 2-game schedule with USC and Michigan. But the closer I look at this, I think talent wise, Penn State might be closer to a Nebraska or a Minnesota or an Iowa this year. And I think there's a really good chance that they drop a game or two against someone they're a significant favorite over. But at the same time, Matt Campbell does have a knack for getting his Iowa State teams up to play their best in big time games. So I could see, Penn State beating Michigan in Ann Arbor and then turning around and losing to Purdue at home. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting out of this team. And then my final takeaway was that just Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, we know they're the best 3 teams in the Big Ten. I've said they're the 3 best programs in college football, and I think this exercise only emphasized that because, I mentioned they're the only 3 teams that had top 5 defense and a top 5 quarterback, top 5 running back, and a top 5 receiver. Washington was close, but, I think that it just proves that those 3 teams really are head and shoulders above the rest of the Big Ten and above the rest of the country.
I just think you're a little down on Penn State, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see. I think Rocco Beck, you've talked up the Oklahoma Mateer at Oklahoma. I think Rocco Beck had a similar season. He was hurt a lot. I don't think he's all that in a bag of chips, but he's good in Campbell's system. Maybe better than I think he is. So I think Penn State, if they're not a fringe playoff team, Matt Campbell is disappointed.
Yeah.
I'll agree with you there.
Yeah.
The schedule is teed up for them to be in the discussion for the playoffs.
Definitely.
For sure.
Yeah,
and Michigan, as every Ohio State's nightmare right now. We'll see how they perform. I mean, there's just going to be that Oklahoma game's going to be very, very telling. The defense is going to be good, but just last year, Sean, that the defense was good, but they got pushed all over the field in Ann Arbor at the end of November. And, when the defense was not good enough to make stops, the defense was not good enough to take the ball away. And, they do add some key. They do, the kid from Utah, 11.5 sacks in the Big 12. But their defense is going to be good. Whittingham's not. I mean, they have an adult in the locker room at Ann Arbor for a change. So that alone should scare every Ohio State fan. But let's see how good the defense is. Let's see how they juggle. So let's see what the quarterback can do. Because I guarantee you, he's going to have a game in September where he looks like the second coming of Christ at quarterback. He is. He's got that kind of athleticism. And then he's going to have a game where it looks like he couldn't start for my alma mater, Denison, a Division III school, a decent Division III football school, but not a powerhouse. And he damn sure couldn't start for Mount Union, which is a Division III powerhouse. So he's going to have those games. And it's just, how do you balance that? And where is he come November? And I continue to say, I think Tommy Carr is going to be the starting quarterback for the Ohio State-Michigan game.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy to say. But I will say, if we are way off about Bryce Underwood and his development and what they can do for him at Michigan, if we're way off and they do have a quarterback whisperer on that roster and he meets his potential this year, Michigan could be really, really scary. I don't think that's going to be the case. But
and they may win the Big Ten and they may thrash Ohio State if that's the case.
Yeah, but again, I don't think we're wrong. But if we are, Michigan fans have reason to be optimistic this year.
Yep.
Great. All right. Well, I think we can put a bow on that topic then and get into the post game spread where you and I each share something we are enjoying in our lives that we want to share with each other and our listeners. Dad, what have you been enjoying this past week?
I'm gonna go trifecta. First, novel. I bought this for your aunt for Christmas, and I dug into it. Started, I think I started in Cape May a couple weeks ago, and it's a novel called Angel Down by Daniel Kraus. It just won a Pulitzer. It's about World War I, the kind of the forgotten war for anybody who's listening to this podcast. We never talk about it. Kind of a misfit ragtag group of soldiers that rescues an angel that's captured in a field. And then what happens after that? The prose is amazing. His turn of phrase, his imagery. He's worked with Guillermo del Toro, who has done some really interesting movies and kind of that straddled the sci-fi horror drama line. And so it's got a little bit of that, like some of the gruesomeness of war. It's just a fascinating book. I'm not finished with it yet. It is going to be, I guarantee you, it's either going to be um, a special TV special, like, one of those 4 episode deals, or it's going to be a movie because it just reads like a movie script. It's a really good book, and he just won the Pulitzer. So the name of the book is Angel Down. Author's Daniel Kraus. I can't recommend it enough. So there's that. There's a band, my song. There's a band called My Morning Jacket. It's one of my college friend Greg Sankey's favorite band, and they're sort of in that Dawes, Decemberist, Death Cab for Cutie genre, singer-songwriters. I'd argue they do kind of rock anthems the way Bruce does or Bono does. The musicianship is sometimes a little bit better than either one of them. And their lyrics are more lyrical, for lack of a better word. And they're not just, fist in the air, pound it. And the song that I'm going to call out is Time Waited from their album that came out it's out probably a year now. And the reason, Sean, I love this is, when you were growing up, I used to make jazz mixes, right? Probably annoyed you. But it's also part of the reason why Jake, I think, walked down the aisle to Take Five by Dave Brubeck, because he heard that as a kid a lot. And very few of your contemporaries or Jake contemporaries know who Dave Brubeck is. Well, one of the songs on one of my mixes, I remember, your mom and I heard the song the first time, and we stopped dead and we looked at each other like with buckwheat eyes. And we were like trying to place the song. And it turns out we thought it was from Night in Tunisia. There's a piano solo to start the song. And we thought it was from Night in Tunisia by Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker. So it turns out it's from a pedal. The jazz or the piano riff is lifted from a guy by the name of Buddy Emmons, who did a song Blue Jade. But Time Waited is just, again, it's in this sort of, in the spirit of Angel Down. It's just an interesting rumination on time and what you can do with it and what it means. And it's just a fantastic song. It's like that whole album is a banger, but yeah, Time Waited, My Morning Jacket. And then the thing I'm watching, well, I'm going to make a passing reference to the Tour de France ends today. This is not what I was going to focus on, but the world's greatest athlete that no one talks about, and at least in this country, unless you're a bicyclist, is Tadej Pogacar. He's going to win his 5th Tour de France today. He may be, and he probably is, the greatest cyclist of all time. Cycling has its Babe Ruth or Michael Jordan. His name is Eddie Merckx. The fact that Tadej Pogacar is going to win his 5th Tour de France today, and he wins just about every race he enters, and he's in the same breath with Eddie Merckx, is crazy. Because even people that would advocate LeBron's the greatest basketball player of all time recognize you're going up against Michael Jordan. That's a hard argument to win. But they know you can make that argument. It's credible. I think Jordan's untouchable, but that's fine. It probably says more about me and my age than it does LeBron and his case for whether he's better than Jordan. But Tade is getting compared to Eddie Merckx, and most people are saying he's the greatest of all time. So that's I'm going to do a shout out to my favorite sport. Probably my second favorite sport, bicycling.
Got it. Thank you for that. I'll link that stuff in the episode description as well for anyone interested in taking a look or a listen. And I'll be honest, I got a little sidetracked this week with my Big Ten rankings. I forgot to put something together for the post-game spread, but I will say I usually have like a show that I rewatch just to have on the background while I'm like cooking or cleaning or something downstairs. Just something that I don't have to pay too close attention to. And recently I started rewatching Parks and Rec as my show that I had on the background. First of all, forgot how just incredible that show is. I will go on record saying it's a better show than The Office. And also reminded me, go rewatch Parks and Rec. The first season, there's a character they have that doesn't quite hit, that they take a couple seasons to get out. But as soon as you hit the middle, like The Office like peaks in like season 3 or 4, and then it's kind of a slow decline. Parks and Rec like gets better every single season. And it's just such a great show. It reminded me also the days of NBC when I was in middle school, and you would have, I think it went Community, Parks and Rec, The Office, 30 Rock, over from 8 to 10 o'clock on a Thursday night. And that was just peak television. And reminiscing on that got me thinking about Michael Schur. So he is the guy that plays Mose in The Office, and he was one of the head writers on The Office. He also created Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He created Parks and Rec and was the head writer there.
Really? I did not know that.
He's a genius. And he also created the show called The Good Place. And I just wanted to shout that out because I think as soon as I finish Parks and Rec, I'm going to go back to The Good Place because that might be my favorite show of all time. It's 4 seasons. It has Ted Danson and Kristen Bell, and it's just first of all, incredibly funny show. The plot is really unique, and there is a great plot twist at the end of season 1 that really takes the whole series in another direction. And it's really funny, but it's also really feel good at the end of the day. So if you like Ted Lasso, you would love The Good Place. So anyone out there that's not familiar with it, because I'm shocked, like I mentioned it at work and like a lot of people hadn't heard of it before. So if you hadn't heard of The Good Place, do yourself a favor and go watch it because it's just honestly one of the best TV shows ever created. And I wanted to throw out respect to those OG NBC shows and Michael Schur, who is a relatively unknown comedic genius.
Fair. I did not know that, so thanks for educating me.
Great. So I am actually leaving for my bachelor party this week, Thursday night. So, all right. Thanks for that. I was going to say, so I think this episode will be all you hear from us this week, but I think you will be able to catch us here the following week, maybe later in the week, for another episode as we continue to ramp up towards the 2026 football season. So I think that'll do it for today's episode. Any parting words this week for our listeners, Dad?
I'm gonna stick with the turn signal thing. People use them. Come on, and just be nice to each other, and don't be a dick.
All right. Be nice and drive safely, everyone. Well, thank you for that. And this has been the Father, Son, and the Holy Buckeye podcast. It's been a pleasure doing this with you every week, Dad. And thank you to anyone and everyone out there that's listening. We will catch you here in about a week or so. Stay safe, everyone. And fun as always, Dad.
All right. Take care, bud.
Cool.